Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Heal the Healer, Mommy Goddaughter Conversations. Alafia, welcome in. Welcome to another Heal the Healer, Mommy Goddaughter edition. I am Mama Zran, and I will begin in the traditional way of just giving honor and respect to all those who came before us and those who give us the authority to be in this space. So I honor the temples in Benin, the sacred temples, and all of the temple keepers throughout the ages who protected and have been passing on this important and sacred knowledge. I give great honor to our great matriarch, Queen Mother Mononai Jidao Maso II, who is the international leader of Nazia Fa Spiritual Institute. I also give honor and recognition to our home temple in the States, Nazia Fa Spiritual Institute of North America, and the founder and leader and my spiritual mother, Mianu Ananasi. I'm greeting you and all of your ancestors and the energies that are walking with you in this life. And of course, I want to recognize my own ancestors and the energies that walk with me. I'm so glad to have you all at another discussion every week. These have been so, so good. And so let's just begin with a little check-in, and then our big sis Almasi has a really, really juicy topic today. But first, let's see how everybody's doing. So the floor is open.
I go, I go, I go. I've been I've been doing good. Um, the fast is over, but not over. Just still trying to align with a healthier eating style. Um, Incorporate at least some of the recipes that I've gotten used to over the last month. And so, everything's just kind of coming together. I'm very appreciative of the spaces that I'm in and um, the things I'm learning and learning about myself and recognizing. So, not it's it's not it's not bad. Everything's been really good. I love it, love it, love it.
I go. Um, I am getting better. I know that I am getting better, but I'm also feeling better too. Um, Before it was just like I was crying every day. And now I think I only cried twice this past week. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take whatever improvement I can get. Um, but I feel like I am starting to feel better about uh about where I am and like all the shifts and changes that have been um taking place. And I just feel like everything has been so aligned. It's been a long time since I felt like I am in alignment uh with spirit and where I'm supposed to be, and that there isn't still like some area of my life where it's like, well, I mean, I know you feel good now, but baby, you need to address this over here. And it's like, I don't want to address that because that's not comfortable. See, that's not fun. And so I am grateful for that. I'm grateful for the respite. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
I go. That's really good to hear from both of you all. Yeah, I am working on improving. No, excuse me. I am improving my transitions. So not having the same routine or structure that the fast was giving. I'm kind of transitioning after that. And so I've had some bouts of the sads, but I also have had really swift, like rebound with that. And when I start to feel that, then doing things to work my way out of that. And just feeling a stronger connection with my ancestors, and being able to like identify them. And so that's really, really good. That was one of my major intentions with the fast, and just letting go of my own expectations. Um, and so, yeah, I've been battling with some pretty like deeper, heavy things, but then also coming up on top. And so that's been really, really nice. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
Alafia, Ago. I have been doing okay. I've been doing well after the fast. Transitioning out of the fast, I was on my cycle, so it was a little bit of an easier transition um, into regular living. Um, I feel good. I appreciate having like just good energy, um, positive energy around me. Uh, I feel more sturdy now that we've gone through the fast, like before the fast versus now. I feel more sturdy, energetically, or even mentally, and I'm just kind of trying to make sure that I can incorporate or do incorporate all of the things that I've learned over the fast about myself or how I interact with my environment to like keep the good momentum going. Um, Trying not to eat too much. But yeah, it's been going, it's been well. Everything's been well. So I'm glad all things have been well with you ladies. I'm going to start this conversation. I do want to pay my respects and give acknowledgement to our home temple in Benin, and our matriarch, Mino Naye Pojita Enemaso II. I also want to give honor to our temple in the U.S., Nazifa Spiritual Institute, and our leader, my spiritual mother, Miano Ananasi. And I give respect and acknowledgement to my ancestors and all of the energies that come with me. And speaking of our ancestors, today I wanted to talk about our culture as African Americans, and pose a question to the group. In your mind, from what you see, from what you experience, what is some of the symbolism that are unique to African Americans or Africans in the diaspora?
I'll go. I think a big one is family structures. Like, for African Americans, we grow up with play cousins all the time. We don't even know they're play cousins until like there's like a moment where you have that like, wait, how are they related to us? And then you're like, wait, they're not blood related, but like the bond is still like, no, that's my cousin, that is my aunt, like that is what it is. It's like a energetic adoption that happens that I think sometimes can be even stronger than legal adoption, or like married in, like when we have a family bond, it's a real bond. And I think coming here, I've seen like a lot of times, within families, like children might be raised by grandparents or aunts, and like so that still kind of stands where we might not have what like a different family structure than like say Western, like regular aunt, uncle cousins, and even like the bond between family members, I feel like it's a lot closer. Like when I would go to school, it would just sound like beyond the nuclear family for most of my like non-Black friends. Well, I would say like non-global majority friends. It was like they were very much so extended. It was like, oh, like acquaintances almost. Like, but within our culture, like we have very strong, tight-knit bonds, typically speaking. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
I go. I was trying to think of something deeper than this, but I do find it very interesting how within the African diaspora we suck our teeth. And growing up in Miami, it was I didn't really start hearing people be surprised about that and the fact that I eat oxtails until I got to college. Um, but growing up in Miami, it was like because there's so many Caribbean people there, the assumption if you saw a Black person was that either they are from another country, more than likely Haiti, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Bahamas. And if they aren't, then they're like first generation born. And so when I would suck my teeth at something, people would attribute it to, oh, you must have, what, you got a boyfriend? Which that part is always annoying too, when people attribute something that you do to some man. It always has to be tied to some man in some way. But I didn't realize that that was just something that we all did until I started watching African movies. And in the movies, they will always be, or the long ones, or they, and so most of my friends are Haitian, and they will always be like, "Did you just suck their teeth? Like, where you get that from? I didn't know Black Americans suck their teeth." And I'm like, "Don't we all suck our teeth? Because confused." And I feel like it's just understood whether we speak the same language or not, or have the same culture or not. Suck your teeth is never a good thing. If you're a kid and your parents say something to you, you suck your teeth and you get caught, you're gonna get in trouble, or you hope that they didn't hear you do it. It's never like anything good, but sucking our teeth is something that we do. I just find it very interesting because as an adult, I started like paying more attention to see, do other people suck their teeth or is it just Black people? And so far, I mean, maybe there are other people, but so far, I've really just seen uh, where it's Black people who suck their teeth and how we refer to children. I know that like a lot of West Africans may say picking, and a lot of Caribbean people may say pickney, and Americans, I don't think we really use the term pickaninny, but it's a term where it's like, okay, yeah, pickaninnies, picnic, picnic, picking, depending on where you're from, but there's a name for children as far as what you call them. And it's just understood, like, I know what you're talking about and how much we like rice. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia. I was trying to think of something deeper than that, but I was like, I kept coming back to those three things. Some kind of rice and beans. If it's not gonna be pigeon peas and rice, then it's red beans and rice, or it's peas and rice, or it's always something and rice, some kind of beans. So yeah, Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
I go. I I don't know. The first thing that I could see similarities in is really like the church. Like I see a lot of things that spiritualize. If you look deeper into the church and the Bible and just different stories in it, I just look at it like, oh. Okay, I hear similar things, and even the worship and sometimes in certain churches, the bathing in the water, the baptisms, just that cleanliness there. We do, spiritual baths, and it's kind of funny. It seems like, oh, you can almost see like, oh, you took these bits and pieces and applied it to this, and y'all made it this. You took out ancestors and you want to make it one person. You took out, and I was like, oh, well, really. So for me, it was just a lot of I can see where they took bits and pieces from it and tried to manipulate the power of the veneration and the power of veneration of your ancestors and deities and put it into their own and had their own alchemies. And I'm like, wow, no one sees like this is crazy. I never understood some of the things that they did in the church. Personally, I didn't go all the time, so when they would say eat the flesh and drink that blood, that always freaked me out. Like, what? Why would I do that? That doesn't. I don't think this is right. I'd just be looking confused. And I'm like, and then because I was into like what's that the charmed ones, right? And so I'll be looking at that show like, bro, this is witchcraft. Like we not seeing this. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like why they say they demonizing witchcraft and y'all are doing witchcraft, drinking blood? Like that's what the evil ones do. Like, hold on, I don't know if that's quite I don't know. Anyway, like it always not all of it never really made sense. Um, until I started diving into where it originated from. And it's just like, oh, okay, that makes more sense than this. But I can just see like those sort of things though, that transferred over. The things that, yeah, the things, the rituals and everything, which they're not all bad. It's just the way they manipulated it. You know what I mean? It's just a manipulation. And I was just like, wow, that's crazy to manipulate something so international, so worldwide. Like that was a mastermind thinking. I was anyway, I've been so yeah, those that the church thing that's one that I could think of. I feel.
I go. All good examples. For me, before like going into spirituality, if I just think about the culture, I would say one of the first things that come up for me is like the Black Power fist. If you see that anywhere, you know we're talking about African American culture or well, yeah, African American primarily. And that's the symbolization of freedom and, breaking away from, um, this system and the like strength of the African American in this country. And so, that black fist is like one of the symbols. And then if I think about it, also like how we do like the pound, like like the pound that was big back in the day, or some of our handshakes were big back in the day, and it just all represents a lot of community, and like as Mama Sean said, that extended family type of feeling. Um, I also think about hip hop. That's one of the one parts of our culture that has been exported around the world, and so that's something very, very recognizable as African American as a symbolism. I don't know if it's all very positive, anymore or ever, but it's definitely something that says us. And then I'm happy that at least we have maybe something that's close to being our own. I'm thinking about Kwanzaa. I don't think like when you see the Kinara and you see the colors of Kwanzaa and you see like that whole setup, that to me is another symbolism of our culture. that we've, tried to create, tried to preserve. Um, and that really speaks to some of the symbolism that I remember or I see as African American. Um, but I think it's interesting that we brought up things like our food, our family, spirituality. And so I wanted to dive deeper into that and see how do you see those aspects, food, family, and spirituality, how do they connect with our cultural roots, our origins? What is the bridge there? How do you see that they connect?
I'll go. As you were talking, something else that came to mind was the way that we dress. Like we always like dress up. If we're going to some type of event or anything like that, you always have to make sure that you're put together very, very well. And then when we have our own events, we always color coordinate or have the same shirts made and things like that. And I think that ties back to like community and belonging. And then coming here, the same thing here. The families will be in the same fabric. Everybody have they personally made outfits in the same fabric. It doesn't matter if it's at the temple or just like going through the streets, like you will see, or like for jobs and things like that. So like that's something that we have carried over, which I think is incredible. And just always wanting to present yourself well and not as like a show, but as a like, this is who we are, this is how you come to a space. And that's something that I feel like has been getting lost a little bit or like has gotten kind of twisted a little bit with the younger generations. And I'm hoping that we can reel it back in because I think that's something um, that's really important. But I think that's also tied to how you feel on the inside. Because I think just in general, as a people, like we always had pride in like the quality of our work, no matter what. And like being here in Benin, like seeing the diligence of like the work that people do, um, is something that's really huge. And I think like even with the foods, and I mean what is it, High on the Hog, High on the Pig, something like that. The Netflix show, they do a really good job of connecting the dots, but it's like, we have the same type of flavor profiles in our meals. And it just depends on like where you live and the type of food that's organically produced. But like we're always doing some type of tomato sauce and fish together. We always got some type of smothered green leafy vegetable. There are certain things that are just always tied together. And so I think honestly, if we would look at any aspect of African American culture or any of the diasporic cultures, we would find a way that it ties back. Because the way that I view it is like it's just an evolution, it's like it still came from the same root. And then based on wherever the seed landed and the amount of sunlight and water and other environmental things that happen, shaped how it expressed itself. But ultimately, it has the same original DNA, so it's going to be similar. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
I go. Um, this question made me think of, I don't know if you all saw it, but it was like a clip of Ryan Coogler, an interview that he did, where he was talking about when he first found out that he was going to be directing Black Panther. I was about to say Black is King. I was like, that is not what it's called. That was very good though, by the way. I've seen it I don't know how many times. But and he was talking about how he was telling Disney that before they started shooting, he wanted to take some time to like go to Africa and visit different countries and everything so he can make sure that what they are doing in the movie is authentic. He just felt like by him being African American, there were some things that he just was not aware of. And so he was saying that one of the countries he went to was South Africa. And when he got to South Africa, he had like been spending time with like these men and like going back and forth with them. And they told him that later that day they were going to be like doing a ritual. And so they invited him to it. And he said in his mind, he was like, okay, I was trying to get myself ready because like ritual, I'm thinking we're gonna do like face paint and be out in the woods somewhere, and we probably gonna have to kill something. And and he said that they pulled up to this house, and when they got there, it was like everybody just sitting around talking and eating, and they had like people were like they all had like their drinks in the cup, and they were holding plates and eating. And he went into like the like he went walked through and greeted everybody and was like, hey, yeah, what's up? And got to the backyard and saw that they had like some meat and stuff on the grill. And they were just sitting there eating and everything and talking. And then he finally asked them, when is like the ritual gonna start? And they were like, this is the ritual. This is, and then they realized that the word ritual made him think that it was going to be like some type of ATR or something ritual. And they're like, no, this is just something that we do. And he said he realized in that moment that he had been African his whole life and that he had been doing African shit his whole life. Like I'm sorry for person, but that's what he was saying. I'm looking at the thing like, yes, because we have much more in common than what separates us. And so I just thought it was interesting. He was like, I already know this. I'm familiar with this. A cookout. He was like, that's what this was. A cookout. People on the corner, they got their beer. Everybody got a plate. They drinking out their red cup. Yeah. A cookout. Ankh in the back with the sandals on the grill. He was like, it was a cookout. And I realized I had been doing African shit my whole life. Like, it was like it's not, we really are not like as different as we think we are. And something else that I thought of was um like how appalling it is to hear like a younger person address somebody who is much older than them by their first name. I'm like, who are you talking to? Like that to me is crazy. And so when I see movies or even in person, when I hear white people, let me not say white people. I'm just gonna say non-black people refer to folks who are like, I know you old enough to be my mama or my grandfather or my uncle or something, and I'm just gonna call you John. Who, even if you tell me your name, John, my home trainer, I'm immediately gonna say Mr. John. I'm not, I'm never gonna feel comfortable just addressing you as such. My mom is 65, and I still hear her refer to my grandmother's friends as Miss Barbara. So who am I at 43 to think that it's okay for me to just call somebody by their first name as if I will ever be on your level? And it's just interesting to me how appalling it is to other black people from other backgrounds to be like, at least we gonna say auntie, uncle, something, Mr. or Miss, but I gotta put some respect on your name before I just say your name. That I'm not just saying that. And I just find that very interesting. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
I go. I was trying to think of something. Y'all pretty much said a lot of it, but that's funny. A ritual and yeah, it's a barbecue. I was when I went to Ghana though, it's I like to dress a little Afrocentric. So everybody's like, "Oh, you gonna fit in great." That's where you want to be from or whatever. And it's whatever. So I get to Ghana and I'm just dressed the way I normally dress. But I found it interesting the people there and where I was and I tried. I went to like Cape Coast and Kumasi, but a lot of the people my age, they didn't wear those. Like I remember we were supposed to go to a party. I had on all white. I got this cowrie shell belt and I wear my shells on my necklace and I wrap my hair up in this white headband, I had fully covered. And she was like, and I'm like, what happened? What's wrong? She's like, well, people gonna think, you practice a certain like voodoo. They gonna be low key scared of you. I'm like, what? She like is giving witchy. I'm like, I'm a witch here too. Like, I thought I was gonna fit in. She said, and she explained, she said, at this point, it's really like the older, I guess, the other generation, they kind of dress more like that. And, everybody else just wear jeans and regular clothes. And I'm just, it, that kind of hurt my heart. I was a little sad about, like, I can see a transition and I hope we can get back to some of that, that's going on in certain places. That was just my experience. Um, but I love a lot of the things I found that was similar. It's like their traditions and traditions in the fact like wedding traditions and our naming ceremonies. Um, those things still go on to this day. We like the big wedding, everybody's here, everybody eating this. It don't stop. What time? What you mean? What time is over? Like when you fall asleep and wake back up and it's the next morning. Like like it ain't no end time. We all night 2 3 days. Yeah, this is what we do. You know what I mean? Same with funerals. What ain't no over that repast at auntie's houses turns into the barbecue that turns into breakfast in the morning because everybody just stays and just what I mean, console themselves with our gathering, with our presence. So I see that. I attended a funeral there, and that's what happened. They're like, "Oh, it's 3 days." I'm like, "That okay? I can see 3 days." You know what I mean? But as you go, it's the same thing. I said, "Oh, y'all just broke it up. The repast is all day. We do that too. It's all day." you know. Um, so it wasn't as different and eating with my hands is just extremely natural. Like that, they was like, "Oh, you." I said, "Yeah, I said I finally feel, I guess, able to do that there. Whereas here, they looking at me crazy because I'm cleaning the bone. But in my family, hey, we clean that bone to the T, bristle and all. We bone clean. We had contests. I won, but we had contests on that. And so when I get here and they suck they cleaning the bone, and I said, I found my people. Like here they are. What I'm saying? Outside of my family, everybody they want to leave all this food on the plate. I'm like, y'all not gonna eat that meat on that bone. But just little things like that, the way you eat the greens and you chop it up just with your hands. I mean, that's how we feed our babies. We don't use force, you use your hand. You feed your baby that little piece of green and that's some of the mashed potatoes on their lips. That's just how you do, and that's what I see here. That's what I see there in Ghana. And so it's just like things like that. I feel like kind of bridge the gap between the two. I feel.
Thank you, ladies. I'm so happy like all of the women on the call have been to Africa and can really correlate and see the bridge between some of our cultural things that we do here and how it relates to home. So, and all of those things were so interesting. For me, just going back to Africa and seeing how they live and the traditions and experiencing being in the culture. The first time I went to Benin, what I noticed was um, the food. The food was so similar, meaning, like how Anitra was saying, we always have rice. They always have some type of starch. It's like in Nigeria, they call it fufu. In Benin, they call it pat, but it's always that with something else. That's like the main thing. And I love how in the diaspora, like in America, that's the food I know. We just used what we had. We didn't have cassava, potatoes. I don't know. We didn't have yam. There's no yam in the U.S. That's all imported, right? So we didn't have the yam. So we used the rice and we used the potato and we used the sweet potato. Sweet potato was big in my family. We used the sweet potato, and like that was the starch that was with everything: chicken, fish, shrimp, anything you wanted to, any kind of protein had to have some rice or some potatoes, and that was the thing. And so I see that similarity in how we just kind of use what we had here to recreate the things that we were really like accustomed to and comfortable with. Cornbread, yes, that was another one. Cornbread was with everything. And so that one thing I saw was like, it was amazing because the even down to the specific dishes, like they have this okra soup. This okra soup is like gumbo. It's just like gumbo. And the way we tell it, you wouldn't relate it back to Africa. You'd be like, oh, that's a New Orleans thing. Um, you don't go past New Orleans. Where'd they get it from? Like, it's just that's a New Orleans thing. But really, like, that's a main dish in Benin and probably other places within West Africa is this okra. And I remember hearing the story about okra and how we got it to the US was that we took when we were in like stolen, we took the okra seeds and put it in our hair. We took the seeds of the watermelon, the okra, the seeds that we needed to make the things that we had. We put it in our hair, and that's how we have okra in the States today because it's not naturally grown here. And we made it so that that was incorporated into our culture, into our food, like as a way of saying, like, you're gonna take us, but we're gonna keep something. Who said that? We leaving here with something. Denzel. Denzel, we leaving here with something. So I thought that was beautiful. High on the Hog really, for me, like brought it full circle with the food, but also with the culture because throughout that show, that series, there was a series of cookouts. Like how Anita was saying, we've been doing African stuff for a long time, and we just don't realize it. Like even. For us, when we're at the temple, we're at the yeah, at the temple, and there's like food and people are dancing and there's music and there's and you think, okay, everything has to be, it's so spiritual, I'm ritual, things like that, but that is a whole, like, building community is a ritual. Building community is something like you do over and over again in time as time goes on. And so like how they party is the same way we would party at like a cookout, or how they, maybe have dinners or like festivals. You would think it's so familiar. You think it's foreign, but when you're there, it's like so familiar. You see the aunties, you see the uncles, you see the children running around, you see everybody getting their plate. Like it's so familiar. And to think that sometimes we think we've lost a lot, but we see like when we go back, we can correlate, okay, maybe that's not all the way gone, maybe that's not all the way lost. Um, I also saw for me like the 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 attitude, how do I say it? Like the mannerisms and attitude. It's like when thinking about like an uncle, like everybody's your uncle. Everybody's your auntie. Everybody is what do they say? Everybody's raising the children. It's like that mindset that like this is community. It's the same way there. Like any mama could tell the child, correct the child, right? Or cook or, help raise. It's like a community in itself, and we keep that here as well. And so those are some of the like blaring things for me, because you would think there's a little bit of it. There should be a big difference, but it's not a big difference. Like when you see a mama there, it's the same thing as you seeing Big Mama here, and how you respect them and how they take care of you and how they correct you. Like it's the same. It's very similar, and we kept that culture. So I appreciate all of us being those who have gone back home to see that firsthand. My question now is, in African American culture, um, where have you seen that we've preserved or we've built a bridge in spirituality?
I'll go. Um, when I went to my first like very big festival or ceremony here, um, I was just observing a lot and it felt very familiar. Like growing up in Black church, like there's very specific jobs and different departments, and I could see that the same thing kind of overlaid within the ceremony. Like I started to just observe people and I'd be like, oop, I would just call them the spirit catcher. Like you know how the and I don't know all the names for everybody, but you remember like, well, I don't know if you went to church, when people fall out and then somebody would put the blanket on the people, or like, if people are shouting and they have the spirit and then somebody would come and like be right there with them, hold them up, like things like that, like very much very similar. And then, if you go back, then there's still people in the back cooking, preparing food. There's people who are bringing chairs. There's like, so like all of the different like positions are still needed. And so I feel like when it comes to spirituality, it's like we've talked about before, where it just kind of we put different names to like the same things that we would already like do. And then when I think about a lot of times when people would catch the spirit, it's like they would run counterclockwise in church. And like there are just certain things where when spirit is really there, there's signs of it. Um, and yeah, I love you, love you, love you.
I go. Ah, I feel like because um I grew up going to church. I grew up in the Black church specifically. I didn't realize that there was really a difference until um I would say, well, yeah, until I went off to college and then like trying different churches in the area, trying to find somewhere to go to. And like I knew that not all churches were Black churches, but the Black church experience was the only one that I was really familiar with. And so I remember like growing up and um and thinking to myself that like there is something else happening here that we are not aware of. Like that was how my young mind thought of it. Because so much of what we get told is evil and demonic about ATRs is exactly exactly what we grew up doing specifically in the Black church. I can only speak to that because that's my experience. Um, and so, like as Mama Sharon mentioned about even what on first Sunday when all the deacons and deaconesses would dress up in all white, and then the altar, you already knew um, that the communion stuff was on the altar at the front, but they always had it covered with a white cloth. The importance of like the baptism ritual. Goodness, if you call that thing a ritual, a Christian would probably have a fit. But that's really what it is. Catching the spirit. I've heard a lot of people, like, they'll mock and say they just running around acting crazy and acting a fool because they think that's what they're supposed to do. But that stuff is real. I feel like the experiences that I had in church, and growing up in Christianity, I had some very real experiences where I knew in that moment that that was spirit and that was a move of God. But at the same time, I was like, I can't believe it, like that just really happened to me, because even though I wasn't a shouting John, that's what my pastor would call it. I wasn't a shouting John, but it did my heart good to be able to see people shout or take off down that middle aisle and run back around or holler. And I can count on one hand, like um, how many times I actually did those things. But I remember trying to hold back, like, no, Rich, you can't do that. You don't do that. Like, you don't do that. But then it would end up happening anyway. Um, and I knew, like, I feel like those experiences are a part of what ultimately led me um, beyond church. I was going to say out of church, but I feel like it led me beyond church, because as you read the Bible, which I always found it so interesting, where they would tell people it's not enough to just read the word, you got to study the word. But then when you start studying, and now you got questions, because I'm reading this stuff. And I feel like if you are a thinker, things are going to make you question, well, what does that mean? And what is going on with that? And then they would start telling you that you're studying it too deep. Now you got to be careful. I was like, well, what is studying too deep? Because you said you got to study. Now you're telling me I'm studying too much. And I feel like all of that eventually led to me realizing that not only is there more, but I want to seek out more. There's more to this and more to spirituality than what is being prepackaged and given to us, where you can only go this far and no more. And then the only explanation for anything beyond that is be careful, it's the devil. You're gonna go to hell. And it's like, well, why are you trying to scare me out of really finding um, out like who I am and who God really is, and spirit, like, why are we doing this? And I think that if people are paying attention, um, the Bible tells on itself. I feel like church tells on itself. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but if you're paying attention, you'll start noticing things and putting things together that make you realize that, hey, wait a minute, what is this really ultimately connected to? I've always found it interesting how, even growing up, I would say that I was like, Black people have a different connection to God and to spirit from what I see other people do. And like whenever you hear us singing or worshiping, especially the South Africans start singing, I always start crying. They could be singing about peanut butter and jelly and how much they love it. I don't know the words, but listen, I feel that. It is real. And I love peanut butter and jelly just as much as you do, with tears streaming down my face, and I have goosebumps. But I'm like, there's something about how I just feel like we connect to spirit. Like, it's like that. It's almost instantaneous. Um, and maybe other groups don't have to. Maybe they connect too, and I just haven't seen it. But I feel like we don't have to work as hard to be able to connect to spirit. And I think all of that stuff is tied, and how we're still doing a lot of the things that we're being told is wrong and evil to be doing. A lot, a lot.
I go. So I think I kind of touched on this in the other question. So that's really, it was a lot of the spiritual aspect um, that I had said before. I mean, I kind of already said it, so I just don't want to go through it all again. So I go.
I'll go. The first thing, it's the first obvious thing that comes to mind for me, and I think Lenitra or and Mama Strong said it was when how Black church looks a lot different than other churches, and almost to the point of like, are we doing the same thing? Is this the Christianity that that y'all talking about? Because we it look a lot different for us, and I think some of the things that are similar or even almost same is this the spirit possession, the catching the Holy Ghost, and what it looks like like we see the memes where it's like African culture, and they'll be like in ritual and they'll be doing the dances and the footwork and all the footwork. And then when they catch the Holy Spirit in Black Christian church, and the footwork is the same. Like it's just like the spirit don't change no matter where you are. And that was very similar to me. It's very familiar to see. The other thing is like the emphasis, and I don't see this a lot in others church, but I do see a lot in African American church, is that, or the Black church, is that music. Music is like the first and last thing. It's like the opening and closing. It's like it's the bread. Like it's very, very important. And you can see when you go back to, Africa, and you see the praise and the worship, you see how the rituals are done. It looks like praise and worship. Like it's like music, dancing. It's and that's really, really huge in the culture. And then like the type of things, like you'll see the drums. Like we always have drums, we always have these tambourines, we always like these percussion instruments. And I was reading, oh, in the singing, right, in the singing, so you always have like these elements within the Black church that when you go to our culture and you see the spirituality there, they are the same like elements. And I remember watching this it was a movie. I forget what the movie was or the book, but I remember learning how we would use these same tools that we could create in the US that would hide what we were actually doing from slave masters. So we would have the drums, we have the tambourines, we would sing the spiritual, the old Negro spirituals, what they say. We would sing those, and they would think that we were praising God, or that we were doing the Christian thing, but we were really like invoking, and we were really doing all of our rituals, how we would have revivals out in the woods. Like we were really doing um, our tradition and our spirituality, but hiding it under the veil of Christianity. Um, I had read something where even like the pastors, they would have the Bible, and they would have the book, and they'd be reading it, the book from, when the slave master would come in, they would read that book. But then when he would go, they would change the narrative to something more traditional. And that a lot of the pastors and yeah, the pastors were actually like priests from, back home. They would pass that knowledge on. In my family, I learned about this last year when I was talking to my grandma, and I just talk, and she knows like my path and everything. And all her question is like, you got a relationship with God, right? And I'm like, yes, ma'am. um, but she would say that I remind her of her father's side of the family. There was an aunt and an uncle that owned a church down in Florida. We're in Florida. We have family in Panama City, so they had a church down in Florida, and what they would do, they was the pastor and the pastor's wife, but they would also do root work for the community. And they were always like, she said they were always like going out foraging, getting plants, putting things together, like, and they were the pastor of the church. They owned the church, and they were doing root work for the family, for the community, for the church, like literally the things that are demonized. This was their tradition and had learned it from their family going back. And I suspect a lot of that is happening or was happening back then, as we try to bridge that culture and hide that, because it was illegal for us. It was it was a death sentence for us. And so you can see where we've done that. And I can even think that that's even ingrained in our music and our culture, um, deeply, so deeply that we don't even see. Another aspect that I was thinking of was, how we view, the dead. Like, we are, well, one, our funerals are different than others' funerals, and I think the world got to see it. I think it was like Whitney Houston's funeral. They were like, Black people funerals are different, and they're like, this is not the crying and the all in black and the, you know. Oh, who is the lead from the OJs? It was it BB King? No. Okay. No, but that's a good point. Like, yeah, we celebrate life in our funerals, and it looks like a party. There is a point where it is a party, and our funerals are like many days. Like, you have the wake, then you have the funeral, then you have the repast, the party afterwards. Like, it's a whole thing. And I remember my when Frankie Beverly. You remember Frankie Beverly? Do y'all know Frankie Beverly?
I remember because they were like after he died, it was like a day where we were all supposed to wear white. I remember seeing it on social
Yes.
media, and they were telling like, since Frankie Beverly liked to wear white a lot, they're like, all Black people need to wear white on. It was like a certain day, and I just made sure, even though I worked from home, I still wore my white, so nobody saw me, but I had it on.
Right. No, no, it's true. And I think in New Orleans, their funerals are even more like the traditional, like with the second line and dancing through the streets with the casket, and like that's like very, very traditional. And I remember one of my friends, she's Nigerian. She had to go back to Nigeria because her grandmother died, and she showed me the funeral. And when I tell you, they had this casket, and it was like maybe 4 or 5 men holding the casket, and they was dancing, they was twirling, they was dropping it, they was lifting it up, they were jigging with that casket down the street. It was like, oh my God. That is just like how we do in New Orleans. The party that they had was just like how we would do. That cookout that we had at the end is just like how we do. Like, we kept the same funeral pattern. And I was like, wow, that's really beautiful. My grandma also used to tell me that when people died back in the day, back here in the US, they would bury them under the house. They would bury them under the house, and that's where they would be. And when I learned more about like our traditions, even like it's like that in Benin. They would see it's like that in Benin too. They when they die, they bury them under the floor, in the ground, but under the floor in the house. And I think I mean, it sounds weird to us. I don't think we do it anymore here in the States, but that's something that we used to do. Um, and that's huge. Because if you have someone buried on your land, they can never kick you off of your land. The government, it cannot be considered eminent domain. None of that. Yeah. So okay. So Miana was saying that why they don't do it in the States anymore is because if you bury somebody on your land, in your house or on your land, it's no longer like they can't kick you off the land, right? They can't call eminent domain. They can't kick you out. It's like not a homestead, but it's something else that land is transformed to. Yeah, there's nothing they can do. So they kind of try. I guess that's like kicked out of the culture, because yeah, it's still legal, but it's not something that we commonly do anymore. But we should, because I did remember seeing a article about this woman. She had like an acre or two, and she buried her family on that land, and she was able to stabilize that land. She couldn't get kicked off at all. It was always going to be her land, and you saw that back in the day too, but you don't see it so often anymore. So yeah, that's kind of some of my experiences with it in my family. So I would ask you, like, if we talking in general, but like in your family, how do you see? Thank you, Jan. How do you see that the culture was preserved in your family, as far as either traditions or spirituality, or hoodoo is big these days? So what do you see for you personally?
I go. Um, in my family, it was and still is common for like the older women to dream about fish when somebody is pregnant. Um, and they never wrong. It's always somebody. Even if the somebody may not know that they are pregnant at the time, it always ends up being somebody. I love that scene in soul food when Big Mama mentioned she dreamt about fish and everybody. I just felt like the reaction to it in the theater was like everybody understood. We knew what that meant. She knew somebody was pregnant. And also, as much as we try to demonize ancestor veneration, how that's something that we still maintain and keep going, where even if you don't call it an altar, you don't realize that that's basically what you have created right here in this living room. You got all these pictures up on the wall and people's obituaries and funeral programs and their ashes, and you got flowers. A lot of times they'll put the fake flowers so they don't have to keep changing them out, but you still have flowers there. Sometimes you'll burn a candle there and think that, oh, it's just Bath and Body Works and it's so it can smell good. But the fact that you have that candle there, like you, this is a whole, if somebody was in the service and you got the flag sitting there from when they wrapped it up and everything, you got all of this stuff here in this one area. But if I say, can we just fix a place for the ancestors, I'm being looked at as crazy. You got a whole spot for the ancestors right here. Um, And also in my family, my grandmother still does this with like kids that are, well, I guess like babies that are one or approaching like their first birthday. If they aren't walking yet, she gets a broom and she starts sweeping their feet and sweeping at their feet. And it is just amazing how they end up walking. Like very soon after that, they take off and start walking. Um, so I have like seeing those things in my family personally, as far as things that like we still keep up and keep going and that we believe in. Oh, and this thing about not walking around with one shoe on, my mama will have a fit. She'd be like, "You're gonna walk somebody out the family, either take that shoe off or put the other one on." But I'm like, how do you walk somebody out the family? There's no real explanation for it, but just to not hear her fuss, you're either gonna put the shoe on or take it off. But that is what I've seen personally. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
I'll go. Um, for me, I don't have as many examples because I grew up pretty like far away from my grandparents and my extended family. Um, until like we moved back once my grandma got sick. And so when I moved into the house, I could see a lot of things that like my grandma had a huge picture wall, of course. And then I remember having the flag. She had a Bible, a huge Bible that had everyone's birth dates, times, weights. Um, and I think those were like the major physical things, but like I just remember even when we lived like far away, she would always call. And I used to be really afraid of like being on the phone when I was a kid, like something about there being a voice of someone that I couldn't actually recognize really scared me. So I'd run away. But like I remember her always like checking up on us. And like when my mom was having financial troubles, she would send and help. And so like my grandma was really big on keeping the family together. And so when she passed, it really, really hurt the family as far as like keeping us together. So I feel like it's kind of on my mom's side, at least, like I feel like it's really on me to start to like bring these traditions back together. Um, because like yeah, ever since she passed, a lot of that has kind of dispersed, which has been really, really hard to see. I feel, I feel.
Okay. The Angel's not there. Um, I thought it was funny you brought up some of the superstitions. We call them superstitions, because my grandma was like full of them. What did she used to say? She said if her ear was itching, somebody was talking about her. If my hand was itching, money was coming. She used to believe, well, she believed it, that if you was born left-handed, that you owed like the first 7 years of your life to the devil. And so she would switch you. She would switch you. That as a child, she switched you to right-handed as much as she could. Um, yeah, no walking in the house with shoes. Um, yeah, there was a lot of superstitions that we thought were superstitions, but really they were like, spiritual things passed down through the generations. Um, let's see, the picture wall was big. There was a picture wall everywhere, or a mantle, a picture wall or a mantle everywhere in my family. Um, yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of things that I can see that were preserved. But mainly it's the food for my family. It's like that's where a lot of the preservation was. Think as well. Yeah, that was the main thing. So when thinking about like how we preserve, um, how about in other diasporic communities, how they've preserved their culture? Have you seen that, let's say from Brazil or for, Colombia or Cuba? Have you seen how they've preserved their culture or how you've seen our culture in others?
I'll go. I can't necessarily give specifics per se, but I would say that I know that the Caribbean was able to keep a lot more of like closer to traditions. Because like when you're on an island, it's very like isolated. And so I know like in Haiti and a lot of the Caribbean, they have a lot more quote unquote superstitions. And they have a lot more, it's like when I'm on TikTok and stuff like that, there's a lot more stories of interactions with like spirits and mermaids and things like that that are coming out of the Caribbean a lot more. And then I would say even like the community factor is a lot stronger. And you see that when people come to the States, it's like if a lot of people will come on their own, like first before they can bring their families, or they're just coming solely to work and send money back before they go back. But while they're in the States, they instantly find their community. And like as soon as you bump into someone and hear that accent or they have that connection, then it's like they get brought into the community. And so I think that that's what I've really noticed as far as like the diaspora and keeping the traditions a lot more. Um, One of the things that I don't necessarily know much about, and now I'm interested in doing some research, is like their views on Africa. Because I think just being African American, like in the diaspora wars, I think there's like America and Africa have a certain kind of like tug and pull. I'm not quite sure how the diaspora views Africa and like wanting to reconnect, if that's really like as much of a thing, because I feel like in the Caribbean a lot more, it's like they feel like they have their own culture, whereas when it comes to African Americans, we tell ourselves and the world tells us we don't have a culture. And so I feel like there's like a stronger trying to like connect back, but I don't know if that's the same, say in the Caribbean, because they feel like they have their own kind of culture. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
I go. Um, just to, I guess, provide some insight. I feel like in a lot of ways, Mama Tron, that like when you look at Caribbean and even like the Caribbean and Latin America, they more easily recognize how African a lot of their stuff or not a lot of their stuff, but like how African a lot of their culture is. And in my experience, I've been seeing where African Americans have been trying to like not claim um Africa. I have run into what you are talking about where they'll, be like, well, I'm Haitian American, I'm Jamaican American or something like that. I think though that the reason why we are like overall are able to see them be more connected to Africanness is because of how the slave trade went. Because at some point in the United States, they realized that it was easier and more profitable to just um, to just breed um, more slaves here in the United States. And so I don't know what year it was, but I know that at some point the United States decided to stop going to Africa to kidnap more people. And so we had like plantations that were used just for breeding. And what they were able to do was create generations of people who knew nothing but slavery. They never knew freedom. They never saw anybody who looked like them that wasn't enslaved, and it made it easier as opposed to in the Caribbean and Latin America. They worked them so hard that a lot of times they didn't live long enough to be able to do that, and they didn't care about the fact they were dropping dead in the field. Not that America cared either, but America be about their money, and they're like, it's just easier and more cost effective to breed them here than to keep going there. And you have to make a slave. It's not enough to just take someone and bring them somewhere else. And so there was also that part that went into it as well, that we keep kidnapping people who are familiar with foraging, who are familiar with living off the land, who are familiar with spirit, who still speak whatever language that they spoke from wherever they took them from. And so now, once you got to Haiti or Brazil or Colombia or Barbados, I have to start the process of breaking your spirit and breaking you into being my slave, because up until now, you've known nothing but freedom. And in the United States, they realized that it was just easier to just breed them here and raise them already so that I don't have to go through that process. And I feel like in that it ended up creating or forcing like a culture to be to be created to cope with the fact that you have generations of people here who have never known freedom, um, as opposed to in the Caribbean and Latin America. I did know freedom. I know exactly what it was, and I'm going to go back, or I'm going to run away and go live in the mountains or go live in the forest. Um, and then they would like create whole communities where we had to do something different here. Um, I don't know. I don't even know if I really answered your question, but that's what I was thinking of saying when you were saying what you were saying. Um, Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
No, yeah, those are good points. We have a I wouldn't say like a bigger fight to get back to our culture, but that was I haven't heard anybody really say it that way before as to why we're so disconnected versus those in the Caribbean and Latin America. Because you're right, they do have a close. I've seen it both ways, the closer tie to their culture, and then you have those who just want to identify themselves as the Spaniard or that local culture. What I've seen mostly is like the synchronization of our African spirituality with Catholicism. Right. So you'll have the altars, but instead of the African deities, you might have a series of saints. And those are synchronized with African deities as a way to, again, hide in plain sight. If slave masters saw, you know, Saint Paul or, um, whatever saint on your altar, that would be acceptable for them. But seeing the properties of those saints may have been similar to the properties of certain deities, they knew what they were doing as far as how that they were preserving their culture. So I definitely have seen that. I've also seen it in the music. Now, I just recently, learned about how their music is composed, like the salsa, the samba, all of the traditional um, music of Latin America. And, you always know that the drums are a big part of the music, but that's the only thing we kind of think of. And I learned that it's not just the drumming of the music, it's the essence of the music as well. Like, sorry, excuse me, hold on. So it's like the essence of the music as well. It's the horns, it's the drums, it's the cadence of the music that we identify as Latin American, but it's really African. Like it's like when you go back to Africa and you hear the music, you're like, "Is this salsa?" And they're like, "No, this is our traditional music." And you're like, "No, that's salsa." And you're like, "No, this is how what we brought and infused with the native, like the Native Americans that were there, their music along with the African music, and then the Spaniard music. And I thought it was just very interesting, even down to the dancing. A lot of the dancing they would describe as they would dance a certain way to make fun of their slave masters, and then they would infuse their African dances as well. And that's how we have like a lot of the Latin American dances that we do. So I just think that all around the diaspora we found ways to ensure that our culture is preserved however we could. I even in Mexico, because Mexico they had how Lenita was talking about the plantations that were just for breeding. Well, in Mexico and a lot of Latin America, they had like road maps to how to breed out the black. They had like pictures, like it was like pictures, like if you take a Spaniard and an Indian, you get this. If you take a Spaniard and an African, you get this. If you mix X, Y, and Z, you get this. And so that's why they say a lot of the Mexican population doesn't look like us, but they were a big part of the slave trade as well. Hence why their skin is so brown at sometimes. Even like some of my Mexican friends would say that they would have people in their family so brown they called them negro, like as a joke. Like, but it's in our culture. Even like Selena's, how she had the big lips and the big butt. They say like she had a lot of like African in her, and there was a lot of slave trade that happened. Now, granted, it ended well before America's slave trade ended, but they did a job of like breeding us out of the skin tone, breeding us out. But then our culture still survived. Like there was nothing in Catholicism that talked about having an ofrenda and Santeria and ofrendas and the Day of the Dead. Like our culture and spirituality still survives in Mexican culture. And so I just thought that that was like something beautiful. Like you can try to blend us out, but we're still here. And I think one of their sayings was, "We all got a black grandma somewhere in the closet." That's what they say. We all got a black grandma somewhere in the closet. I think it's sad, but I also think it's beautiful that you can't erase our history, no matter how much that they try. Yeah. Okay, so this is good. This is a good conversation. I think a lot of times we don't recognize how much we have, how much we've preserved. Um, yeah. Oh, I had another question. I'm trying to think of it. Um, I had another question that was pretty good. Uh, let's see. How do you returning back to your culture, how do you think that that will help you infuse more traditions into your family, into your life, into your community? Like, what things are you gonna like take back and really like push for generations?
I love you, I love you, I love you. I go. Community. I think the sense of community would be something I definitely would want to bring back to my culture, and it'd be very beneficial to for us to uplift, to make living together not so taboo. Who cares if, you know what I mean, it's 8 or 9 or 10 of y'all in there working together, like not make it, so like, oh my gosh, like you're doing it because you're poor or something and not because you want to build wealth, you know. So community in that sense, because I see a lot of them, they do that, and that's pretty cool. Um, and respecting your elders, having patience with them, even if you think they're wrong, or they're not being, this whole thing is, oh, I only give respect to someone that gives it. No, no, respecting them regardless. Just because they're older, you respect them, period. If you don't agree, how to hold your tongue, in their presence, and there's ways to have conversations. But just that kind of respect to the young people, for the young people, to the young people, for the elderly, okay, our and our teachers and our elders and our guides, um, that level of respect and humbleness. You don't just take things, even in nature, you ask. Um, so respect in all aspects. I think that's something that just we get away from being here. Everything's so bountiful, and we can just pay for whatever. Some things you can't pay for. You can't just pay for everything, and so you it has to be a homage or a sweat equity. Bringing that into play is very important. Everything's not just, oh, I can pay for it, so it's mine. No, everything can't be bought. Some things you have to work at. Um, some things you have to earn, and you have to, and rightfully earn it in the right way. So just bringing those things back to the community, and that's of importance. Um, and it'll be very beneficial for generations to come. I think those kind of three solid core values and understandings that we kind of get away from, or we only do it in certain aspects, right? But those are things that are good for all aspects. Just for I love you.
I go. Definitely like a knowledge of self, um, of where we come from, and who we are. And like Angel had said, community, just having strong connection. And I really liked how she said to have respect, even when respect isn't given, because that really shows more about your character and your integrity, and even where you are in your healing process. Because like, I definitely get it. I've definitely I'm a match your energy type person. Um, but when I really do deep reflection, it has to do with like hurt parts of myself in places where I feel like I wasn't fully like raised or nurtured as a child. And so then when I come in contact with someone who's in a role of like a certain kind of position, it's very triggering versus being able to have compassion and realize like, oh, there's areas where this person hasn't grown and they're unaware of it. And like the more egregious their behavior is like the same degree of the level of like hurt or like not being taught what the correct way is. And so being able to have the right amount of compassion and then also just ability for like self-control and discipline and self. So like if you know yourself well and what you deserve and what your role is supposed to be, then you're able to navigate the world differently, right? In the Mommy Goddaughter class, we're talking about like harmonizing and balance. And so I want to pass on to my family just being able to know how to harmonize situations. And then also have enough resources and not just like physical, material, financial resources, but like inner resources to be able to like have that abundance to give more grace and give more compassion, and to demonstrate how to like talk to or be in certain spaces. And then definitely like always to leave the house looking your best, and just staying connected to family, having that as a priority. Um, those are the main things I think that I can think of right now. Lafayette. Oh, well, I guess it kind of ties back to like being in your role, but like having everybody in the family be so completely who they're supposed to be that the like symphony or the orchestra of our family works well. Like I would love to see everybody to be able to be in their proper roles and positions, so that everything flows really beautifully. And then seeing who they end up bringing into the family, their partners, and like the children that they produce. Um, and being able to explore more, learn more about like the different countries and tribes in Africa that we come from, and finding ways to integrate that into our lives, whether it be through the food or the music or the clothes or just being able to honor all aspects of ourselves, I think would be my biggest goal. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
I go. Uh, One thing that I have learned about ancestor generation is it's not just about remembering the people um, who came before you, and the reason why you're here is because this man met this woman and they had these kids, and then they met other people and then they had kids until it trickles all the way down to you. But just a lot of what I have learned in this group and from Yanu about how about the work that goes into when you are venerating your ancestors, how you can play an instrumental part in healing your lineage and things that have been in your family for a long time, for generations, but because we are not being taught about our ancestors, information is not really being passed down. I feel like it used to. You have no idea that you have an anger issue, like 23 other people in your bloodline who also had anger issues. And so it's like we can't heal what we aren't aware about, and how we can decide, okay, well, if that's the case, if it was 23 other ancestors before me, if I'm number 24, then I'm going to do everything I can to try to make sure that there isn't a number 25. Um, and so, like the importance of that, I think a lot of times, um, especially since so many of us grew up Christian, our families, um, immediately think that we're doing something spooky and demonic. And I'm hoping, uh, or at least let me not say I'm hoping. I want to work towards, at least with my family, getting away from thinking that and seeing it as a way for us to heal and to get better. That mother-daughter relationships don't have to be a certain way. Like if it has been that way before over and over again, maybe our ancestors on the other side are trying to get us to see that, hey, you need to fix this. Like that was an issue with me and my mama. It don't need to be one with you and yours or you and your daughter. So I would really like to be able to see that. I feel like if we were to do that as a whole, like as an entire diaspora community, um, getting our ancestral veneration down and really being able to understand how this is also a tool for us to learn more about ourselves because we are our ancestors. I know some people like to say we are not our ancestors, which I feel like is an extremely disrespectful statement to make. But to be able to learn who we are in certain patterns that have established themselves and to get better and to improve so that future generations, everybody's always have something to deal with, but that we're not passing down the same thing over and over and over again. Unfortunately, I feel like that is something that we are too good at as a people, dealing with struggle and trauma, or probably not really dealing with it, but we sure do pass down a lot of stuff like it's a family heirloom. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
Go. For me, what I will really try to harp on is ancestral veneration as well. Um, I think that that wasn't so valued in my family. We talk a lot about like our, we do ancestral veneration as far as talking about the stories of ancestors, but we don't call them ancestors. We don't really partake in like the fullness of ancestral veneration. And I might be the first one in a very, very long time in our generations to do so. So that's something that I want to really pass down to my son, so that he can continue that path. Also, I think that in our culture, respect is big, and it's not big here. And you can see the battle with your own children as trying to like instill in them respect, and like not interrupting or not calling somebody by their first name or how to greet or just these things that are really important in our culture that help us because she says this quote that says like respect and humility will open many doors, and I think that um, I want doors to be open for my children. I don't want people to be like, oh, he's not respectful. He's not, he has no humility. I'm not going to teach him this. I'm not going to show him this. I'm not going to bring him this, far. And I think he'll get far in life if he does that. And so I really want to instill respect the way our culture does early, because it's not just only about respecting others, but it's respecting others shows you have respect for yourself. And I think that in the American culture, the respect for yourself is not even something that's approached. It's kind of like if you can be bigger than somebody else, if you can be selfish, that's respecting yourself, and that's not always, that's not the case. So that's one big thing. I want to show him the traditions and culture, the things that I've learned, that if I had learned them earlier, I wouldn't have struggled as much in life, wouldn't have failed as much in life, wouldn't have so much trauma. I think that that's healing, that's ingrained in our traditions, that we don't necessarily know until we start to seek it out. Um, yeah. Okay, well, speaking of like what we want to teach our generations or what do we want to keep for our family, one of the things that I was thinking about, and I think had this conversation earlier in the week, was about because we're having the Role of a Woman series. And I think in spirituality, the role of a woman um, is interesting. And I wanted to see if you saw a bridge between, the role of a woman in spirituality as far as the diaspora, or African Americans versus, um, you know, the motherland or Africa. Like, is there a correlation between how women are seen in spirituality, or is there a stark difference?
I'll go. I think that like the mothering in Africa and the mothering in the United States, I would say more with like past generations, um, are very similar, but the culture is very different. And so I feel like, at least for these younger generations, they don't feel as like loved and cared for, because they might not necessarily get the same kind of nurturing that like their white counterparts might get. But the like very like structured and like just always foot on the neck to have excellence is there because it's like they've experienced and know that you always have to be doing your best and striving for your best, um, to be able to achieve in like white culture, um, in society, but I feel like it's not necessarily received that way. Um, I feel like there's this shift and transition that's happening, that's very like difficult. Um, Alafia.
I'll go. I don't know how to answer the question, so I just wanted to make sure I say that I'm not just sitting here, but I don't know. I don't know if I have an answer for that. I go. I mean, Alafia.
Go. Okay, so I guess I'll give some background. So, um, when I think about what I've seen in African spirituality, um, the role of the woman is like really big as far as she's doing all the things. She's mothering the community. She's, doing the ritual. Like it's so much that the woman does in spirituality. And we learned in the Mami Goddaughter class that like spirituality for a woman is our superpower. And it's really seen as far as what roles women take in our traditional spirituality and culture, meaning that we go to the highest ranks of the system, right, within spirituality. When I think of like the Black church, I see that like you see the role of the woman, the nurturing. She's in all the committees, she's taking care of the children, she's doing the cooking. You see that role, but it's kind of like there's a ceiling where that ends. And it's like the patriarch takes over, where they even, had it to where it's like some churches don't allow women to be pastors. But I don't know if it's still that way, but some don't even allow women they say women shouldn't be in the pulpit type thing. But it's interesting because I think that that's part of like the influence of Western culture, of European culture, because when you go back to Africa, you see that they're priestesses, they're of the highest ranks in spirituality, while in the Black church, they're limited to what they can do, or we used to be limited in what they can do as far as how they can serve within the church ranks. And so I think there's some similarities when it comes to the motherhood, the mothering of the community, but there's like a stark difference in power, right? Or in influence, or in position that women take in spirituality here versus there. And so I just wanted to see like what your take was on that. Have you seen that? Um, yeah. I feel.
I go. I have definitely seen that. I remember, especially like growing up in church and wondering why every time if we're gonna march in or march around the church or something like that, or if it was like to take up offering, how the men had to get in front of us. I was in we called it the junior and youth choir, and how the boys had to get in front of us first. And it was so strange to me because what I was being taught um, in church was like opposite. Well, I don't want to say opposite, but in some ways it was opposite of what I was learning in school. Because in school they were talking, they were telling us that anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you. Um, and like the whole girl power thing coming from the Spice Girl, I think that's what that group was called. And so seeing that, and I was confused about why are we still holding on to it. I think that as we come out of these systems more and more, we start to have a better understanding for our value and everything that we are really able to do uh, spiritually as women. It wasn't until coming out of church and that type of indoctrination and patriarchy about believing that a man has to be um, at the top of something and at the top of something spiritual in order for it to be real. I remember when my friend got married, and even though their pastor was a woman, he just felt very strongly about the person marrying them had to be a man. Um, and so a lot of our work, like if we don't know anything else and we believe that, and then we perpetuate it ourselves and coming out of church, um, I have really been able to learn that me being a woman or a womb holder um, automatically gives me access to um, spirit and like I guess the power of spirit and the divine in a way that men just don't have that same type of access. They have to work harder for it. That wasn't something that I learned until coming out of church and the patriarchy of everything I've been taught. And I think that if more women do that, then then we or they will also learn the same thing. But I do think that, yeah, that's a big difference, especially with the priestesses and the Iyas and like that title. And it's like, yeah, you're considered at the top and men are like your counterparts as opposed to there's another step in the ladder. So before I can do this ritual or something like that, I need to get a man to do it for me, kind of thing. A lot of that we were taught that in church, and I see that it's not the same way um, in spirit. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes that's what we carry into, like when we go into African spirituality, that's kind of like what we carry. That's why some of our women get caught up with all the babalawos and like following them. And for me, I just always felt it more comfortable to be taught and led by a woman, just like it's a safer space for me. And then learning that, like you said, being a woman give you the access to those like higher spiritual positions. It only made sense why I felt that way. So we were talking a lot about like how our traditions are hidden in plain sight. But I think that we have to definitely mention some of the things that have changed as for us because we've had to be under this like a religious system that doesn't recognize the woman in the same way that our traditions do. Okay, so yeah, that's all that I had. I don't know if anybody has any other things they want to say. I think we got about 5 minutes, so if not, then I will turn the floor back over to Mama Shrum.
I go, I go, I go. This was such a good conversation. It definitely felt good to feel seen and then also to ground into something deeper. And so I'm so glad that we were able to have this discussion. And I'm really excited and curious what we'll start noticing through our daily life and throughout the week. Definitely put it in the chat. In the Divine Feminine chat so that we can keep the conversation going and hear from our other sisters too, the ways that they are noticing our cultural connection. And Mianu always says that the way tradition survives is through living it. And so being intentional every day and with everything that we're doing, making sure that we are actually acting in the ways that we want to see perpetuated because we can talk till we're blue in the face, but ultimately it's what is done that really influences um, everyone around us. So I'm excited for this week. I'm excited for our next class in a few minutes. Until next time, everyone, be well.